The local butter industry is often forgotten in place of its more popular counterpart, milk. However, it played one crucial role in that it established the superior quality of Orange County's dairy products. We will now turn to the industrial wonder of the iron horse. Only a few small railroads existed throughout the United States in the early 1830s, and most were located in the coastal regions where larger cities and harbors existed. However, plans were being made for more expansive routes. One of these, the New York and Erie Railroad, would connect Lake Erie at Dunkirk, New York, with the Hudson River at Piermont. Upon arriving at Piermont, trains would be loaded onto a barge and travel down the Hudson River to New York City. The construction of this route formally began at Deposit, New York, in 1835. From Piermont, the route crossed through Rockland and Orange counties to the Delaware River Valley. Upon reaching Chester, the workers encountered a serious problem. The black dirt, a commodity that was fertile in nutrients and most valuable to the farmers of the area, proved to be very weak and unable to support the weight of a railroad. The solution to this dilemma was simple. Since the ground lacked the strength, a foundation needed to be constructed. The first step in this process was the construction of a wooden trestle to act as a foundation for the tracks. In Chester, this trestle was between 20 to 30 feet high and fitted with 50-foot long piles driven into the ground to reach the solid rock. Next, railroad hopper cars were filled with debris ranging from excess dirt to garbage and transported to the site. The fill was dumped through the elevated tracks, eventually covering the trestle and creating an embankment that, along with the trestle, proved sturdy enough to lay tracks and support the full weight of the trains. This example of construction can be found across Orange County's many railroads, with much of today's Metro-North Port Jervis line having been built in this fashion. The portion in Chester, although not having seen a train since 1983, is still visible and walkable as the popular Heritage Trail. Now, what did this transportation-related construction technique have to do with the legacy of Orange County's dairy history? It is indeed precisely how the birth of milk transportation came to be. The individuals who were granted the contract to construct the railroad here were Thaddeus Selleck and Matthew Brainerd. Brainerd retired during the project, but the railroad soon went into bankruptcy and was unable to pay Selleck for his work. Once the company reorganized, Selleck was compensated by being appointed as Chester's first station agent. When Selleck was appointed as a agent in 1841, butter was still Orange County's most popular dairy export. However, his attention was drawn not towards the rich butter, but rather the superior quality of pure Orange County milk. Milk was produced to make butter, but transporting it over extended distances was considered impossible since milk could not survive long journeys without being cooled at a proper temperature. Except for a few hotels and establishments that could procure fresh milk from nearby Westchester County, the city residents grew accustomed to the vastly inferior and dangerous swill milk. Visualizing a very lucrative market on the horizon, Selleck was determined to solve what was long considered impossible: transporting fresh milk to New York City without it spoiling. Continuing to push forward with this proposal, Selleck found that his largest obstacles were the farmers themselves, who had become satisfied with the strong and stable trade established through butter. In his work, The New York, Ontario, and Western Railways, Milk Cans, Mixed Trains, and Motor Cars, historian Robert Mahowski describes their reaction to the transportation of milk, stating that, quote, "They scoffed at Selleck and his idea in the same manner that had greeted most visionaries since the dawn of time. Farmers could simply not grasp the concept of milk traveling more than 50 miles, especially in the hot summer months accompanied by jarring movements of the railroad cars." Still, sometime between 1841 and 1842, Selleck met with the local farmers Philo Gregory, James Derland, Jonas King, and John M. Bull to discuss the novel idea of shipping milk by rail to New York City. The milk would have never survived the journey by horse and carriage, but the operation of a railroad greatly reduced the time it took to reach the city. In Selleck's proposal, the milk would be transported in butter churns 41 miles to Piermont and then an additional 21 miles by barge to a storefront located at 193 Reed Street. It took some time for Selleck to convince any farmers, but by the spring of 1842, farmer Philo Gregory agreed to send approximately 240 quotes of milk bound for Gotham, which arrived successfully. While Gregory's farm was located in Chester, he accepted the proposal because he had a business in New York City and had made an arrangement with Selleck that the milk would be sold to customers upon its arrival. Surprisingly, the milk was not immediately popular among the city crowds. They found the yellow scum on top of the milk repulsive, which was, in fact, the rich layer of buttery fat that made Orange County's milk so vastly superior and valuable. This layer of rich creaminess was not found on the milk produced by cows fed on swill. Very quickly, city customers grew to like the smell, taste, and look of the fresh milk sent directly from the farm, and the demand became so great that Selleck was forced to open additional milk depots. As his business improved, farmers stopped laughing at Selleck's idea and joined with others to transport their milk. The Erie Road was soon shipping 53,713,244 quarts of milk by 1853, and by 1897, over 7,000 milk depots had opened in New York City, selling close to 750,000 quarts of milk a day to the eager city residents. Through Selleck's intrepid endeavor, a grand business was born that would help to build 5 railroads, return more than $50 million to Orange County, and bring about several local inventors, such as Jacob Vail of Goshen, New York, who pioneered the predecessor to the modern milk can. No history of Orange County's dairy farming history is complete, however, without a discussion of the century-long conflict between farmers and milk dealers. After Thaddeus Selleck first shipped milk by rail in the spring of 1842, the milk trade proved to be a highly competitive business. For the first 30 years, farmers enjoyed a period of prosperity. They were able to fix the price of milk while dealers, who acted as middlemen, purchased the milk wholesale from the producers and then retailed it to the general public. While the farmers were in control of the production of milk, the lack of economic infrastructure in New York's rural countryside, along with their inability to effectively organize as one milk-producing body, allowed the terms of milk sales to gradually shift in the favor of the dealers. These dealers grew disingenuous and fixated on making a profit by steadily reducing the price of milk paid to farmers, while simultaneously raising the cost to the public. In the early 1870s, farmers had little to no means of consigning their milk elsewhere due to the evolving methods of transportation and selling milk independently. The take-it-or-leave-it ultimatum left farmers with no alternative but to submit to the stranglehold of the dealers. For the next century, the decision over who could sell milk to the public instigated a prolonged conflict between New York's rural dairy farmers and metropolitan milk firms. The 3 most remembered events of this conflict occurred during the early 1880s, 1916, and 1939. During the 1882 to 1883 Orange County Milk War, farmers that dumped milk, better known as spilling committees, were made famous as they disposed of thousands of gallons of milk, originally bound for New York City, throughout the streets of Orange County's villages. In 1916, a second strike lasting just short of 2 weeks robbed New York City of 10,890,000 quarts of milk as the newly formed Dairymen's League, in coordination with New York State Food and Market Commissioner John J. Dillon, fought with dealers such as Borden's and Sheffield Farms for better milk prices. Finally, in 1939, not only Orange County but much of New York State's milk-producing counties, led by the Dairy Farmers Union, again became embroiled in this fight for better milk prices. For a period extending over a century, farmers have battled for a fair say in the market. However, an alternative pathway was soon becoming accessible. 4 years before the 1882-83 Orange County Milk War, George Henry Lester of New York City patented the first milk jar, and at the same time, Alex Campbell first marketed milk in experimental bottles. No confirmed examples of Campbell's bottle have surfaced to date, and Lester's milk jar resembles more the shape of a large mason jar. But that would change in 1880 when the Warren Glass Works introduced the first standard-shaped milk bottle to the market. For nearly a century after, farmers would begin to purchase their own milk bottles in large numbers to sell milk directly to their communities, thus omitting the middlemen. Encompassing the most complex research, chapters 5 and 6 of this work portray the golden age of the independent dairy farming era of Orange County, lasting from the late 1880s into the 1940s, when over 4,000 farms populated the county in every direction. Dairy farms assumed various roles. Typically, farmers that could afford to use milk bottles and deliver milk from door to door also bottled milk for other surrounding farms that could not afford these expenses. One such example of a farm like this was John Davidowski's Lakeside Dairy of Newburgh, who, according to John's son, Joe Kirby, constructed a dedicated creamery building for bottling milk and fondly remembers visiting other local dairy farmers who exchanged milk, such as Kramer's Dairy of Walden, New York, and Edgar Spencer of Newburgh, New York. In some cases, farmers only possessed a few cows and sold their milk within another business. Clarence S. Knight of Monroe, New York, chose this path, selling milk at his hardware store. Finally, there were the large farmers in the region who rarely sold milk locally and, instead, participated in the lucrative New York City market. Operating from the turn of the 20th century until his death in 1943, Henry S. Chardevoin's Orange County Milk Company shipped milk to New York City from his creamery in Unionville, New York. These individuals are all facets of what was once Orange County's burgeoning dairy industry. 60 years ago, one could not toss a milk bottle without it landing on a farm in Orange County. Heading into the heartland would have shown miles upon miles of fields, pastures, and cows. This was truly a haven for agriculture. Since then, however, the situation has greatly changed. In 2016, Orange County had only 42 dairy farms left from its one-time total of more than 4,000. 7 more farmers sold their herds in 2018. Those that remain are concentrated in the heartland, with the southeastern and western regions now practically devoid of any milk production. The issue of space has hindered Orange County's dairy farming. Over the past century, the region has transformed from a farming mecca to a bedroom community for white-collar workers. Farms have been quickly replaced with housing developments and shopping malls. This, coupled with the fact that Americans are drinking less milk, means that Orange County's remaining farms face insurmountable difficulties. However, their legacy is far from forgotten. Picturesque barns, pastures, and even a few creamery buildings still grace the local landscape. The former Erie Railroad main line, along which the first shipment of milk was conducted in 1842, was abandoned in 1983, but its roadbed did not remain dormant for long. Today, the Heritage Trail offers local residents the opportunity to travel through Orange County's heartland along the old railroad route. One walks directly upon the embankment that Thaddeus Sella constructed in the 1830s, and can even stop by the restored 1915 Chester Station, which is now home to the town's historical society. The milk bottles themselves, much as the ones seen here, are yet another way through which one can visualize the might of Orange County's farms. Through their many variations, ranging from the earlier embossed varieties with tin tops to the later pyroglazed styles with their vibrant colors, show the great variety of farms that crossed every area of this county. In a region that is rapidly changing and developing, it is important that we preserve our history. I can only hope that spoiled milk will be a facet of that preservation, not only bringing back memories to those who lived through this era, but also inspiring a new generation of this important story of the Hudson Valley.